Dear Boomers, today we are going to explore the following quote. We should measure the prosperity of a nation, not by the number of millionaires, and in this case today, billionaires, but by the absence of poverty, the prevalence of health, the efficiency of the public schools, and the number of people who can and do read worthwhile books. So, what does it mean for a nation to prosper? It's not the skyscrapers or the billionaires, but it's something much more deeper and universal. W.E.B, Du Bois, was a visionary who lived through turbulent times in the American history. He was the first African American to get a PhD at Harvard University, and he was a founding member of the NAACP. So he challenged us to redefine prosperity, not as wealth for the few, but the well-being of the many. He was a groundbreaking intellectual. He was a sociologist, a historian, author, and civil rights activist. He wrote a book called The Souls of Black Folk, and he became a educator himself. He spent his early life not only documenting injustice, but also imagining a better world, which I think we all do. We all do that. A world where the nation's success is measured not by the wealth of the few, but by the equality of life for everyone. We, just went through that quote, and it explains and it embodies the core of his philosophy, connecting justice, education, health, and equality, and breaking those things down and connecting the dots to helping people thrive in the life that they find themselves. Yeah, but today we have a lot of homelessness. We have food insecurity, which is promised to get worse with tariffs and rising costs. We have struggling families, and there are community kitchens, there are housing initiatives, and grassroots efforts that discuss and address poverty. And what does poverty mean in modern times? It is the lack of inequality, especially income inequality, the lack of access to basic needs, and the impact of systemic barriers. For instance, the U.S. millions live in the U.S. below the poverty line, despite being in the world's wealthiest nation. There have been a lot of initiatives aimed at eradicating poverty, such as universal basic income, fair wages, and affordable housing. And there are people, through education, have risen out of poverty. I'm reading a book now by Whoopi Goldberg, who lived in she had a very loving family, so she didn't even know she was living in poverty because she had a support system. If you read Michelle Obama's book, the same thing. They lived in poverty, but they had a tremendous community connections and people helping each other. But in this day and age, we have more often than not crowded hospital waiting rooms. If we had a system that offered free health care, that would be very helpful. And healthcare workers would be happier if their patients were taken care of. So health is much more than the absence of disease. We do have affordable health care. I don't guess everybody would agree with that in Obamacare. And we do have a very heavy-duty lack of mental health resources and preventative care. Preventative care is something that we all must practice and take care of yourself and make sure that you're thinking and feeling and sensing at the highest order in this age that we are currently in. Poverty directly impacts health outcomes, leading to shorter health lifespans, chronic illness, and inequalities to healthcare systems. And in Du Bois's era, where health disparities between races were stark, and discussed his advocacy for equality in healthcare access. That was one of his big pushes in his lifetime. So we can look at a well-funded public school with updated technology and engaged students to an underfunded school with outdated materials and overcrowded classrooms. And education breaks the cycle of poverty and fosters innovation. There are current disparities in health and school funding. There are teacher shortages and access to resources in different regions. And people, the more a person wants to learn and the more a person emphasizes the joy of learning, they will get farther in life. So education in Du Bois's time was seen as a primary pathway for African Americans to achieve equality, yet systemic racism limited access, and it probably still does. And worthwhile books. I was recently visiting my local library, and that was awesome. The place was bustling with people reading. There were people in conference rooms sharing their ideas about the books that they were reading. And, then we could go to a balcony and look out over the city and see the hustle and bustle of children making things with the help of community access. I think literacy is directly related to reading worthwhile books that challenge the mind and the spirit. Books foster empathy, and also they cut down the barriers to education, and they empower people to make informed decisions. There are mobile libraries in more rural areas, and there are prison book donations. We can donate our books that we no longer read to our local prison communities. That's what we did with my mother's book. She had about 1,000 books. We took the ones that we wanted and donated the rest to our local prison. And what was so incredible about that, a lot of those books were inscribed, to my wonderful wife on her 60th birthday, etc. And happy anniversary and birthdays and holidays. And I do believe people got the idea that maybe in a relationship, people could be treated well. And that's how my parents were. They were very loving to each other. So the Metrics of Prosperity by W.E.B. Du Bois proposed poverty eradication, health, education, and literacy, and applied that to modern society. Grassroots movements are very helpful, and local initiatives and individual actions are making progress in these areas. And there are going to be setbacks and challenges. This is the way it is. It's like the birthing process, a few steps forward and a few steps back as we are ready to birth a new world. There's a healthcare crises and epidemics and cuts to educational budgets. But there is a moral imperative here. Dr. Du Bois's vision is not just a blueprint for nations, but a moral call to action. How we treat the most vulnerable among us defines our humanity. True prosperity is about justice, equality, and collective well-being. What kind of nation do we want to leave our children? How can we as individuals contribute to a society where these values thrive? And just think of thriving communities and children graduating and doctors assisting patients and people reading. W.E.B. Du Bois reminds us that a truly prosperous nation is not measured by millionaires, but by its ability to uplift every individual. As we move forward, let's carry his vision as a compass, a moral compass at that, guiding us toward a better, more just world. We need to think about the quote that we read here. How can we build a society aligned with Du Bois's vision? Take a look at my video that comes up here and subscribe and like this video.